This one's for the women. This one's for the women based off of the fact of the experiences that I've been through, tied and channeled, basically Goddess Inanna. And I want to talk about Goddess Inanna and her descent into the underworld. Now, Inanna, long story short, her sister lived in the underworld. She wanted to go there. She is the goddess of love and war and fertility. And her sister ruled the underworld while Inanna ruled earth and heaven. Yeah? So she adorned herself with her greatest jewels, her best clothing, and she went on the descent on the underworld. And now there were 7 gates. I think it was 7 gates. And at every gate into the underworld, she had to strip herself of something, strip herself of her jewels, strip herself of her clothing, strip herself of her shoes, everything. By the time she got to the underworld, she was bare naked and she had nothing, and she essentially died. Now, Enki, the god of wisdom, there was all sorts of stuff between her death and Enki coming down, but essentially the god of wisdom come down to save her. Yeah? Now, Inanna is Venus. She is Venusian energy. And essentially, whenever we go through some form of difficulty, we are descending into our underworld, because what the adornments represent on our body is how we dress up our identity and our ego based on the experience that we've had. But when we're calling in a new experience, that identity is not going to be served that experience. So the descent into the underworld, now women, you always have to understand that whenever we are going through something that represents more negative energy, is actually a rebirth space. Now, and it's really easier said than done, and when we are in the depths of our own despair, like even me personally, it is a lot more difficult to be conscious of that fact and reiterating that to ourselves of going, okay, we're going into the descent, which means it's foretelling and foreshadowing of the transformation and the rebirth. So the descent is the rebirth. So we have to learn to get excited, even though it doesn't feel great in the midst of it. But when we come out of it, it's like, oh, wow, brand new day. This was great. Thank God I went through that, because this is fantastic. But the descent means you have to shed yourself of things that were basically holding up your sense of self. Yes, your sense of I, your sense of identity, your sense of ego. So the universe is infinitely intelligent and understands you don't need that person. Yeah, you're close to that person, but you actually don't need them in this reality. This idea of yourself and your belief of yourself is actually holding you back. You have to shed it. You have to shed this. You have to shed that. Like even the way you look, you may have to think, do you know what? This has to go. So when you are brought down to the underworld, you are naked. You are naked with nothing left but your spirit. Yeah? Your spirit. And that's what it's essentially means the descent is. The descent is the death of the identity, and you are left with nothing but the naked spirit, which is essentially who you actually are. Yeah? Then wisdom, Enki, upon death, you need wisdom. You need your intelligence. You need it. Yeah? And it's also important that we also understand that it's the masculine. And I don't mean it's masculine, oh, men can save you and blah, blah, blah. No. It's the mind. The mind, to use it as a tool to basically go, how can I get myself out of this despair? How can I see it differently? How can I be creative enough? How can I see that this is not death, but rebirth? Because the mind is the sword that cuts through the BS. It cuts through the illusion, because death is nothing but an illusion. Like, obviously, like, death is dead. If we die, but essentially the spirit lives on. The consciousness lives on. But essentially, wisdom comes down from, like, here, comes down and picks you up when that's where the rebirth process starts. But the reason I'm telling this is ultimately because women, if you want to call in the essence of change or the essence of transformation, or maybe you don't even want to call it in and life just hands it to you, that there is a blessing coming through, but for a blessing to come through, something of equal value needs to be lost. So when I say equal value from the past, it needs to be gone. It is no longer necessary. There needs to be a new rebirth of you, because as within, so without. Whatever is happening outside of you, you become you are the direct reflection of that. So if your sense of identity is going to shift, and that can be debilitating, I get it. But it's the nature of the feminine, of the cyclical nature of the phases, like of the seasons, but also the nature of our menstrual cycle. We have our light weeks and our dark weeks. We have the light moon, like the full moon, and then we have the new moon. So we have to essentially be comfortable enough to connect with the balance of both. Yeah, you cannot have one without the other. But the other thing is the fact that Inanna represents Venusian, the Venus. And every time that she passes through the sun astrologically, she will either become the morning star or the evening star. Yeah, she will either be the summer or the winter, and the descent is the in-between state of when Venus goes between the sun. She dies. She has to shift. She has to transform. We are so divine in that nature, but it's really important that whenever you're having a descent and you feel like you're losing everything and you're losing some form of sense of self, that we have to ultimately be comfortable with the unknown and be comfortable with the fact that we are rebirthing something, and that rebirth is ultimately step by step getting us to who we are destined to become, step by step. It's not all done in one transformation, and we will have some transformations that are much harder than others, and we shift and we change. But the energy of our nature is to shed. And this is the most beautiful message that I will give from this, is our wombs shed. Every month we shed, we let go. We let go. Our bodies let go. The infinite intelligence of our bodies letting go of what's no longer serving us, which is the womb lining that's for the old month. And then we grow and rebirth a new lining for the new month, for the new opportunity of creation, which is the egg. So with that, Inanna represents the transformation of shedding, where she lets go of everything of who she thought she was to become who she actually is, to create on a new cycle. So appreciate those moments when you are going into the descent, because it's wholly worth it on the other side. But this is the beautiful thing, is when Inanna comes back to the surface and she's alive again, she sees the sun. Yeah, new day. And it's at that moment where you see that the night was necessary, the death was necessary, the transformation was necessary, because there is always a new day. Now, when we understand that cyclical nature of the feminine, and we go, okay, we can be more conscious in how we move through these times. And I'm working on it, But this was a beautiful thing because for me personally, since I'm going to say last September to possibly April, I went through a complete descent. And it showed up in different stages and different ways, but it was a complete descent. And when I seen the new day that happened in April for me personally, I was like, oh my days. All that was completely worth it because the new day is great. The new day is everything I've ever yearned for, yeah? And don't get me wrong, I can be shown in different ways of how that will shift with a new descent. But right now, I'm in gratitude for my own descent, for Inanna coming to me and showing me what I needed to shed and the ideas of myself that I needed to shed to ultimately become the vibration that's ready to bring something new in. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed and see you later. Bye.